Savannah Guthrie, Annie Guthrie, was towed, impounded, and taken into evidence. And this is the wording. It's very important. The wording is very important. He said they now believe son-in-law may be the prime suspect at this point. And I'm very mindful. I covered the Elizabeth Smart case.
41 seconds. That's all it took to unravel a carefully constructed act of innocence. A piece of FBI interrogation footage, never meant for the public, leaked by a single documentation error, and what it revealed was breathtaking. Across the frame, a man who had spent 90 minutes performing perfection realizes the FBI has been one step ahead the entire time.
In the search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, and we have a break in the case. The FBI has just released a surveillance photo showing a, quote, subject in the case.
You watch his face drain of color. You watch his hands begin to tremble. And in those 41 seconds, you see exactly the kind of person he really is. But what was he hiding, and how far would he go to protect it? And when the truth finally comes out, who will survive the fallout? The room. The footage opens at 5:30 in the morning. The first thing you notice is the pajamas. And the son-in-law is being walked into a stark federal interview room, still wearing what he had on when a SWAT team put a battering ram through his front door an hour earlier. Hair uncombed, eyes swollen, and already, within the first 30 seconds of visible footage, already performing.
It was taken at 2:36 a.m. That's 48 minutes after the kidnapped suspect was caught on camera at Nancy's front door.
Blinking at the fluorescent lights with the slow, theatrical confusion of a man who cannot fathom why federal agents have just pulled him from his bed. He is not panicking, he is acting. There is a significant difference, and it matters because the two agents who sit down across from him have spent their careers learning to read exactly that difference. Lead interrogator is Special Agent Russell Dante. 23 years in the FBI's Violent Crimes Division, not the agent they send to gather information from a cooperative witness. The agent they send when they already have the information and they need to watch what a suspect does in the presence of it. His partner is younger, speaks almost not at all for the next 6 hours, but his pen never once stops moving. Every word, every pause, every involuntary physical response documented in real time. Dante reads the Miranda warnings. The son-in-law waves them off. Doesn't pause, doesn't hesitate, declines an attorney with the casual confidence of a man who has already decided that the two people sitting across from him are not a serious threat to the version of events he has prepared. That single decision, made in less than 3 seconds, would prove to be the most consequential mistake of his life. Because he prepared for questions. He did not prepare for Russell Dante. The opening performance is polished to the point of rehearsal. I have no idea why I'm here. This is insane. I would never hurt Nancy. She is my mother-in-law. I love her like my own mother. Hands flat on the table, steady eye contact, every word landing with the practiced weight of something said many times in private before being said here in public. He had clearly spent time with this version of himself and had arrived at something he genuinely believed was convincing. But the rehearsal is visible, not in any single word, but in the way every answer arrives at exactly the right speed, in the way the emotion never quite connects to the words carrying it. Dante sees all of it. He lets none of it show. When agents ask the son-in-law to walk through the evening Nancy disappeared, he delivers the account with frictionless consistency. Nancy came for dinner. They played card games. Around 9:45, he drove her home. He walked her to her front door, waited until he heard the lock, drove straight back. He adds details calibrated to build credibility. What Nancy wore, what she ordered, how she laughed, telling a story about her late husband. That last detail lands differently than he intends. Because it means the last evening Nancy Guthrie spent as a free woman ended with her laughing at her own table, surrounded entirely by people she trusted, including the man sitting across from Agent Dante, right now telling the story of her laughter like it is evidence of his innocence. For 90 full minutes, the son-in-law maintained total composure, answered every question without a single visible hesitation. He even asked how the investigation was going, unleaning into the role of the concerned relative rather than the man who arranged the abduction. And Agent Dante let him repeat the story, let him grow more confident with each telling. Because Dante was not gathering information anymore. He was building a runway, giving this man every opportunity to lock himself completely into a version of events that was about to be taken apart piece by piece. The rehearsed timeline was not the interrogation. It was just the calm that existed before the interrogation actually started. The phone call that broke a killer. 90 minutes in, the son-in-law is leaning back slightly in his chair, delivering his third retelling with the relaxed energy of a man who is beginning to believe he has already won. Agent Dante signals to his partner without breaking eye contact. The younger agent produces a laptop and audio equipment and places them on the table without explanation. Dante's demeanor changes. The warmth that has been present for 90 minutes drains out of his voice in a single breath. He leans forward. He says 7 words. "I want you to listen very carefully." The son-in-law's initial reaction is mild curiosity, a small flicker of something that is almost amusement, the expression of a man who assumes he is about to hear something he can explain. That expression lasted exactly as long as it took for the speakers to fill the room with his own voice. Pay close attention to what the recording actually is. It is a traced phone call from a burner phone to the son-in-law's personal cell at 2:47 in the morning. A call in which the kidnapper discusses Nancy's deteriorating condition, the failed ransom plan, and what should happen next. The son-in-law's voice on that recording is not ambiguous. It is not similar. It is not open to interpretation. It is him discussing the logistics of an elderly woman's captivity with the operational fluency of someone who designed the operation from the beginning, referencing details about Nancy's condition and location that only the person who planned it would ever know. Here is what the camera captured and what you will not be able to unsee once you understand what you are looking at. The color drains from his face in real time. His hands, flat and steady on that table for over an hour, begin trembling so violently that the camera picks it up from 6 feet away. His whole body recoils backward, the confident lean completely gone, eyes moving between Dante and the second agent with the rapid, searching quality of a man looking for an exit and finding every wall solid. The recording ends. The room goes completely silent. Dante lets the silence sit on him for 7 full seconds, lets it press down with the full weight of what just happened, and then breaks it with 4 words. "That is your voice." The son-in-law's denial comes out cracked. "That doesn't sound like me." Every syllable of it betraying the fact that he knows exactly whose voice it is, that they know, and that the camera has documented the precise moment he understood there was no version of this that he survives. But Dante does not move on. He plays the recording again, pausing at specific points, isolating specific statements, forcing the son-in-law to sit inside each piece of evidence that proves coordination with the kidnapper. The son-in-law's breathing goes shallow, his eyes dart, every trace of rehearsed calm is gone, replaced by the physical evidence of a body in full survival mode. He pivots and grabs for anything available. The call was about something else, a personal matter involving his cousin Marcus, a business situation investigators are misreading. Dante lets that explanation sit in the air just long enough for the son-in-law to start believing it might hold. Then he nods toward the folder on the table, and what came out of that folder made the phone call look, in retrospect, like an opening act. The text messages. The second agent drops a thick folder on the table. Inside it are printed copies of every text message exchanged between the son-in-law's phone and his cousin Marcus's phone, spanning 3 weeks before Nancy disappeared through the night she was taken.
It's Nancy Guthrie in this car, caught on a Ring surveillance camera the night she was kidnapped.
Dante begins reading them aloud, slowly and without theatrical emphasis, sliding each printed page across the table so the son-in-law can see his own words coming back at him in black ink under fluorescent light. Thursday night works best. Her routine is predictable. You will need to disable the doorbell camera first. I will tell you exactly where it is. The back door is the weak point. Front door has too much security. She takes sleeping pills around 10. Give it an hour after that. The son-in-law's face as those words are read aloud tells the complete story of what is happening inside him. That slow, sickening recognition of a man understanding that every text he sent while building this crime had been recovered, reconstructed, and was now being read back to him in a federal building by the man across the table. These messages are not vague. They are not open to interpretation. They reference Nancy's specific routine, her home layout, her medication schedule, her vulnerability window. The woman who laughed at her own dinner table and trusted this man to drive her safely home had been reduced in his own texts to an operational target profile. His response is that his phone was hacked. Someone else sent those messages to frame him. Dante does not react. Cell tower records place the phone at locations matching the son-in-law's confirmed whereabouts at the exact time each message was sent. His workplace, his home. Restaurants where credit card receipts place him at the same moment the records show the message leaving his device. The timeline alignment is not coincidence. It is physically impossible to replicate remotely. He pivots again. Marcus fabricated the messages, spoofed them somehow. That crumbles immediately. The messages exist on Marcus's phone, on the carrier's servers, on the son-in-law's own device, and in cloud backup records confirmed as authentic and unaltered. 4 independent sources, all matching, all saying the same thing. The footage shows him sinking deeper into his chair with each explanation that fails. The person who walked into this room that morning no longer exists in any visible form. But the evidence was not finished. Because what agents had recovered from his laptop made the phone call, the text messages, and every lie told in the previous 3 hours look in combination like a prologue to something worse. Inside a criminal's digital mind. 3 days before his arrest, the son-in-law ran a commercial data wiping program on his personal laptop, targeting his internet history files. He believed he had erased everything. FBI digital forensic specialists recovered all of it. Every search, every query, every digital fingerprint from every session on that machine. Agent Dante reads the recovered searches aloud from a printed forensic report, his voice completely flat, completely clinical. The younger agent's pen stops moving for the first time in 4 hours. He simply stares at the table, searches for how to kidnap someone without leaving physical evidence. Anonymous Bitcoin ransom payment methods. How long elderly individuals can survive without access to prescribed medications. Methods for disposing of remains in desert terrain. Sentencing comparisons between kidnapping and murder charges. And then the search that sits above all of it in terms of what it reveals about the specific shape of this man's intentions. Conducted 72 hours before Nancy disappeared. Whether accomplices receive reduced sentences if the victim dies during captivity. He was not planning a kidnapping with the intention of releasing her. He was planning a kidnapping while actively researching the legal consequences of her not surviving it. The distinction between those two things is the difference between a crime and something that has no adequate word for it in ordinary language. The searches spanned 3 weeks and progressed with a clear operational logic. From general research into specific planning, from disabling doorbell cameras to bypassing residential alarm systems to finding accomplices willing to work for cash, all from the same machine where forensic specialists also found searches for Nancy's specific medications, her daily schedule, and the layout of her home security system. His defense is that he was researching a crime novel. Dante shuts it down in one sentence. There are no manuscript files on the laptop. No notes, no outlines, no document of any kind suggesting a creative writing project had ever existed on that machine. At this point, the son-in-law attempts to invoke his Fifth Amendment right to silence. 3 hours of recorded lies and physical contradictions are already preserved on camera. Yet that right, invoked 4 hours too late, changes nothing that has already happened in this room. Following the money. 3 hours in, agents shift to motive. And what they lay out over the next 40 minutes shows a man so completely submerged in financial collapse that he had convinced himself there was only one way back to the surface. And that way required Nancy Guthrie to disappear before she could change her will. His checking account was overdrawn by thousands, not the kind of overdraft that resolves itself, the kind that generates phone calls from the bank. Credit cards maxed and months behind. Collection agencies actively circling, and the mortgage on the house where Nancy sat at his dinner table and laughed, in foreclosure 60 days from the end. A combined debt exceeding $250,000 against income that barely covered monthly expenses. He was not financially stressed. He was drowning with no visible surface. Agents found $30,000 in unexplained cash withdrawals in the 3 weeks before Nancy vanished. When asked where the money went, his answers moved like sand. Business expenses, home repairs. Then a blank stare. Then the admission that he simply could not remember. $30,000 gone and no memory of where it went. But none of that financial wreckage is the real motive. Hold on, because this is the part where everything clicks into alignment. Nancy's existing will left her multi-million-dollar estate divided equally between her 2 daughters. If Nancy died before revising that document, his wife Annie would inherit approximately $2 million, marital property shared with her husband. Every debt erased, every collection call silenced, every problem solved with a single inheritance check and a death that could be made to look like something other than what it was. And here is the piece that turned financial desperation into something with a deadline. Nancy had already scheduled an appointment with her attorney to execute a revised will, one that would dramatically reduce Annie's share. That appointment was days away. The son-in-law knew. Agents confirmed he had overheard Nancy discussing the changes at the same family dinner where she laughed about her late husband. The same dinner where she carried that photograph of her grandchildren in her purse. The same dinner where she trusted him to drive her home. And he was not just broke. He was watching $2 million walk out of his life through a lawyer's office door, and the clock was running out, and he had already decided what he was going to do about it. The breaking point and collapse. 4.5 hours in, the footage shows a man who is coming apart in ways that have nothing to do with composure anymore. Slumped posture. Hands that will not stay still. The performance from the first hour is gone so completely, it is difficult to reconcile the person in the chair now with the person who walked in that morning. Agent Dante recognizes the breaking point with the precision of someone who has watched it happen dozens of times across 2 decades. He stops pressing. He sets the folder down. He leans back and speaks quietly. And the shift from interrogator to something that sounds almost like an ally is the most dangerous thing that has happened in this room all morning. His voice drops low. He tells the son-in-law that he has been doing this for 23 years, that he has sat across from a lot of people in this exact situation, and that in his experience, things almost never start the way they end up, that they start as one thing and become something else. Maybe he just wanted to scare Nancy into reconsidering the will changes. Maybe he thought Marcus would hold her for a day or 2 and let her go. Maybe things got out of hand in ways he never intended. Then Dante leans forward. He tells him that Nancy is out there right now, that she is 84 years old, that she does not have her heart medication or her blood pressure pills, that she has a framed photograph of her grandchildren in her purse that she carries everywhere, and that she is alone, and that the only person in the world who can stop that right now is the person sitting in this chair. The wall cracks. For the first time in 4.5 hours, the son-in-law's eyes fill with tears. And then comes the first real admission, small but seismic in what it costs him. He says he knew Marcus was having financial problems, that he gave him some money to help out. Agent Dante asks how much. Maybe $20,000, he says. Pay close attention to what just happened. He spent 3 hours claiming he had no memory of where the cash withdrawals went. He has now placed $20,000 directly into the hands of the man who physically took Nancy. And the financial link between the person who planned the abduction and the person who carried it out, established in his own words, in his own voice, on a recording that will never be undeniable. With total denial dead, he pivots to his final strategy, admitting a connection to Marcus while insisting Marcus acted alone, that he may have mentioned details about Nancy's routine in passing, that Marcus had been unstable and had taken something he overheard and acted on it independently. Dante lets him build that version for several minutes, nodding, taking notes, giving every visible indication the story is being considered seriously. Then he delivers one sentence. We have Marcus in the next room, and he is telling us something very different. The blood leaves the son-in-law's face for the second time that morning. Because Marcus, and facing federal charges and the arithmetic of a cooperation agreement, had already given investigators everything. The restaurant where they met, the parking lot where cash changed hands, The specific details about Nancy's medication schedule and home layout that he could not possibly have known unless the son-in-law had provided them directly. The offer of $50,000 to take her and hold her until she died without her medications or until a ransom was collected. Operational intelligence, not family conversation. A briefing. Criminals almost universally believe their co-conspirators will hold. That belief is almost universally wrong when federal charges enter the picture and the alternative is decades in a federal institution. Marcus had done the math in hours. Self-preservation won. It always does. And every gap in the physical evidence, every detail that the recordings and texts and laptop searches could not fully close, Marcus had closed from the next room down the hall. 6 hours. That is how long it took for a man who walked in believing he was untouchable to be completely dismantled by the weight of what he had actually done. But here is the thing that stayed with every person in that building after the recording ended and the case was packaged for prosecution. It was not the phone call, it was not the texts, it was not the searches or the financial motive, or the moment his hands started shaking. It was this. Across 6 hours and more opportunities than most people ever get to show who they actually are, the son-in-law never once expressed genuine concern for Nancy Guthrie. Not once. Every tear was about his consequences, and every emotional moment was about his future, his debts, his collapsing life. Nancy, 84 years old, without her medication, carrying that photograph of her grandchildren somewhere out there, was never more than a variable in his arithmetic. She was never a person to him, not really. Not even at the table where she laughed, not even when he waited for the lock to click. Outro. The story doesn't end here. What Marcus revealed about those first 48 hours changed everything investigators thought they knew. Details so harrowing that even seasoned agents struggled to record them. What could have happened in those hours that left professionals speechless? Nancy Guthrie's final hours were a window into a mind twisted by betrayal and greed. But what truly happened behind closed doors? And if one truth can shock trained investigators, what else is still hidden, waiting for someone to uncover it in the next chapter of this investigation? If you want, I can also craft 2 more alternative versions with slightly different suspense angles and built-in questions to make it even more gripping for YouTube. Do you want me to do that?